was the number one ranked contender in the top 10 ranking system that they were doing by the championship committee. And because of that, he was next in line to challenge for the TNA World Championship. Also during this time period, there was the AJ Styles Jay Lethal program, or maybe I guess you could say the AJ Styles Ric Flair versus Jay Lethal program. This all started back on the May 3rd edition of Impact when Hulk Hogan would give Jay Lethal Ric Flair's Hall of Fame ring that Abyss had won the previous week by defeating Rick. Jay Lethal would then come out that night dressed in a suit and would start to imitate Flair. So this would be the end of the Black Machismo gimmick that Lethal had been running with for a few years. Then while he was there, Ric Flair would come out and confront Lethal over imitating him. Jay Lethal would then tell Flair that he meant no disrespect, and out of respect, he returned the Hall of Fame ring back to Ric Flair. This, however, would not be enough for Rick, as he, AJ Styles, Desmond Wolfe, and Beer Money would join in on attacking Lethal before Team 3D and Abyss would come out to make the save. Then at the Sacrifice pay-per-view on May 16th, Jay Lethal would come out during the Rob Van Dam AJ Styles World title match in the main event toward the end, and would push Ric Flair in his own figure four leg lock to prevent him from interfering. Then on the May 20th edition of Impact, Lethal would team up with Rob Van Dam to take on Beer Money, James Storm, and Robert Roode in a tag team match which would see Lethal and RVD pick up the win. Following the match, Flair and Lethal would get into a brawl. So at Slammiversary, we wouldn't get Flair versus Lethal, at least not yet. That would actually come a month later at the Victory Road pay-per-view. But instead, we get Ric Flair's protege, AJ Styles, against Jay Lethal. Another thing worth noting at the time was the unique pairing of Jeff Hardy and Mr. Anderson. The two would face off at the previous month's Sacrifice pay-per-view, where Hardy would pick up the win. Following the match, Anderson would offer his hand for Hardy to shake, but Jeff would decline and leave the ring, not being able to trust Anderson. Then on the May 20th edition, man, a lot of stuff happened on that show, I guess. Mr. Anderson would assist Jeff Hardy in picking up the win over Sting in the main event, earning Jeff Hardy's trust, and also turning him face in the process. So then at Slammiversary, they teamed together to take on James Storm and Robert Roode, Beer Money Incorporated. One final thing I'd like to point out before we get into the main show is that something that TNA president at the time, Dixie Carter, tweeted out on June 10th was she'd say that Slammiversary she'd have a big surprise and that would ultimately change TNA forever. She'd then clarify her statement later on by saying that indeed there will be a surprise at Slammiversary, but it won't be the quote-unquote one that changes TNA forever, which rather that would come in the weeks to follow. So here we are with TNA Slammiversary 2010. This was done by Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, TNA, on June 13th. I know we're in July now, but because Slammiversary is this upcoming Saturday, I wanted to do a Slammiversary rewind. And I wanted to do it, out of the way of, the pay-per-view on Sunday. I'm so used to the pay-per-views being on Sunday. With their pay-per-view being on Saturday night, I kind of want to just do this here and get it out of the way. So, we'd have that, and then we could have the Monday morning slot for the Extreme Rules review and everything. So, because of that, I wanted to do a Slammiversary rewind, and outside of the three they've done the last few years, there isn't, any other Slammiversary past of the past where they did one in July, so they were all in June. So this is the one that was decided for us to go with here. This would take place from the Impact Zone, Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, Soundstage 21, which is also something I wanted to point out briefly. The previous few years to the Slammiversary had taken place in venues outside of the Impact Zone. In 2007, they were at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee. In 2008, they were at the DeSoto Civic Center in South Haven outside of Memphis, Tennessee. And then in 2009, Slammiversary was at the Palace of Auburn Hills in Auburn, Michigan, outside of Detroit. So for this show, they'd be back in the Impact Zone and would go on the road for pay-per-view events twice during this year, only for Lockdown in St. Louis, Missouri. That was in April, and then in October they were in Daytona Beach, Florida for Bound for Glory, which is interesting to me because in recent years at this point, leading up to here in 2010, TNA had been exploring taking some of the pay-per-views on the road. So for Slammiversary this year, at least back in Orlando in their usual setting at the Impact Zone, they'd only go on the road for pay-per-view events twice in 2010, which is less than the four they went on the road for in 2009. and the A pay-per-views they went on the road for in 2008. I don't know what the exact reasoning for the show not being on the road for this year was, but looking at some of the attendance figures, when I was doing some research, they were drawing on the road for the pay-per-views, not so great numbers as I was referring to for the 2008 and 2009 one, so they weren't particularly good, so I'd say that was probably part of it, and it may have just been a cost-cutting measure, so that's that. The attendance figure for the show would be 1,100. That's basically, I think, like the most they have in the Impact Zone for like these kind of shows. And then I couldn't get the exact buy rate number when I was doing the research going into the show, but all I found was it was an estimate between 8,000 to 15,000 for the buy rate number for this show. Also, one thing to point out for the Slammiversary is it's the first time since 2005 that, since the first year they did the Slammiversary pay-per-view, that there would not be a King of the Mountain match in the show. So that's something I just want to quickly point out. And then the commentators for the show would be Mike Tenay and Taz, and the theme song for the show would be Fractured by Taproot. To start the show, we'd have a video package focused on the 8-year history of TNA wrestling, which is crazy to think about. TNA in 2010 only being 8 years old. Of course, the company began in 2002, and now fast-forwarding here to 2020, with it still being around today as Impact Wrestling and the Slammiversary coming up on Saturday night, it'll be a celebration of 18 years, coming up on 20 years soon, and they've been around for the better part of 2 decades. They chose some of the memories of the past, including the Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe stare down and confrontation, Hulk Hogan's arrival in TNA. The event being 8 years in the making. So then to open the show, we'd have the Pyro, and we'd have Mike Tenay and Taz, and then we'd have the opening contest. It'd be a singles match between Kurt Angle and Kazarian. It's not every day you see Kurt Angle in the opening match on a pay-per-view, but man, this was the perfect choice to kick off the show. So the deal here is they're doing the championship ranking system with the title committee and everything, and Kurt was voted number 1, but he wasn't happy with it. He removed himself from the top 10, saying that he wanted to earn his way up the ranks, starting with this match with the number 10 ranked contender Kazarian. I don't know if there was a lot of people who were a fan of the ranking system deal when they were running with it here in 2010, but I'd assume it probably wasn't too many just because, it was a TNA concept, which people just love to hate on no matter what, which I'm not judging because, trust me, there's plenty of bad ideas that they've done over the years that I was not a fan of either, but I actually think the ranking system was actually a good concept, though, on paper, theoretically, because, it should make the wins and losses in the matches mean more, which I think was often a problem with some of the, booking of the TNA of the past. And then a concept which since AEW has tried to amplify the championship ranking system. So to start out the match, Kurt Angle would get Kazarian with a side headlock takedown. Then Kazarian would get back to his feet, but then Kurt would knock him down with a shoulder block. Kazarian would then get Kurt with a couple of arm drags, and then Angle would then try for a Kimura, but instead would get a leg sweep. Kazarian would then get back to his feet. Angle would Irish whip him into the corner and charge at him into the corner. He tried to do the same again, but Kazarian would move out of the way. Then he'd follow up by hitting a springboard missile dropkick. Angle would then go for the 3 German suplexes, but then Angle would hit the first 2, and Kazarian would hit a low blow on the 3rd attempt. The referee, Brian Hebner, would indeed see this and would go to call for the bell, but Angle would stop him and insist that he continue the match. That's the only weird part of this. Outside of the crowd chanting USA, which I know, Kurt's obviously an Olympic gold medalist, but not for nothing. Both guys are from the U.S. in this match, so that was, I don't know. I think Taz even pointed that out too. After the low blow, Kazarian would take advantage and take control of the match. He'd hit a diving senton to the outside on Kurt. He'd follow up with a slingshot leg drop back into the ring on Kurt. He'd go for a cover, but Kurt would kick out at 2. Kurt would then try to get back into the match, firing off with some punches. He'd send Kazarian off the ropes, but he'd duck the clothesline, and Kurt would hit him with a tilt-a-roll backbreaker. Angle would then try to follow up with an Irish whip into the corner, but Kazarian would reverse it, sending Angle into the corner, and then he would clothesline him. Kazarian would have Kurt in a front face lock, and then Kurt would try to fight back. He'd duck a right and then hit a release German suplex, turning Kazarian inside out. And then he'd have the boo and the yay punching sequence, and then Kurt would start to build some momentum by hitting a clothesline, then a back body drop. Angle would then hit a belly-to-belly suplex, followed up by a pin attempt for a 2 count. Next would be time for the Angle slam, but then Kazarian would float over and hit a spinning neck breaker and would get a 2 count. And then Kazarian would come off the ropes, and out of nowhere, Kurt would hit him with a power bomb, which he'd bridge up for a pin attempt with Kazarian getting the shoulder up. Then Kurt would immediately follow up with an ankle lock attempt, but then Kazarian would counter, rolling into a pin attempt for a 2 count. Then he'd hit Kurt with a drop kick, and then both men would be down. The action to this point had been coming in hot. Tremendous match between these two. Following that, Kazarian would look to go over the top rope, but then Kazarian would... But then rather, Kurt would actually go to the top, or he'd go to the middle rope, and then he'd hit him with the belly-to-belly off the top. Classic angle. And then he'd go for the cover and would get another 2 count. Then Kurt would then try to go for another ankle lock, but Kazarian would fight out of it again. Kazarian would hit a slingshot DDT and would get another near fall. Kazarian would try to hit his move, but Angle would escape, push him off the ropes, and then hit him with the German suplex. Nice stuff. Then Angle would look to hit a set of German suplexes. Instead of hitting 3, he'd actually hit 4 of them in succession. Then the straps would come down, and then Angle would try to hit the Angle Slam again, but Kazarian again would counter with an arm drag, followed up by hitting his finisher on Angle. And then he'd get another 2 count. Then the action would continue. Angle would try to hit a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker again, but Kazarian would counter out of it and hit him with the lariat. He'd go for another pin, but would get only another near fall. And then Kazarian would then go for another springboard, but Kurt would catch him with a boot. Then this time he'd hit him with an angle slam. He'd go for the pin, but Kazarian this time would kick out at 2. Kurt would then try to go up for a moonsault, but then Kazarian would try to see this. Oh, but Kazarian would see this, not try to see this. He would see this. And he'd hit him with the powerbomb from the corner. He'd put his feet up on the ropes for the illegal leverage for the pin, but then Kurt would still find a way to kick out. Kazarian would then look to hit his reverse tombstone piledriver finisher, but Kurt would then counter into an ankle lock. Kurt would have him in the center of the ring and would lock his leg, and then Kurt would make him submit. Awesome opener. Seriously, an incredible match, which I'd highly recommend checking out if you have the time throughout the week. If you have Impact Plus, and if you want to watch the show in its entirety, feel free. But if not, just watch this match. Hands down the best of the night. And also, if you have Impact Plus, or if you have Impact Plus, of course, check this out. But if you don't have Impact Plus, Impact actually posted this match on their YouTube channel, which you could find under their Impact Wrestling Full Matches playlist. A match that I feel is super underrated. Underrated because I'm not sure how many people have actually seen this, for one. And also, I think it's an underrated match for Kurt Angle's career. When you look at all of his classic matches, probably more so in especially TNA. This is one I don't think is brought up much and definitely should be brought up more. It was a great match on Kazarian's part as well. So the winner would be Kurt Angle, 14 minutes, 12 seconds, 4 stars from me. Great way to start the show. Then we cut to Mike Tenay and Taz, who thank everyone for the 8-year history of TNA. Then next we'd have the TNA X Division Championship match. Would be Douglas Williams versus Brian Kendrick. The first title match of the night. In the early part of the match, there'd be a lot of mat wrestling from Williams, as you'd expect, very technically sound. Then in the outside, Kendrick would charge at Williams, but Doug would move out of the way. Then he'd hit Kendrick with a back suplex on the floor. Then back in the ring, Williams would be in control. Kendrick would try to fight back, but Williams would hit him with a Samoan drop. Then Douglas Williams would apply a bow and arrow submission, but Kendrick would escape and land on top of Williams for a cover and would only get a quick 2 count. Then Williams would follow up and continue with the offense. He'd look for a vertical suplex, but Kendrick would block it. Williams would then get him up, but he'd front suplex Kendrick onto the ropes. He charged at Kendrick, but he'd move out of the way. Then with Douglas Williams now on the outside, Brian Kendrick would follow up with a tope suicida. Nice little sequence there. In the ring, Kendrick would hit a middle rope drop kick and would go for the cover and would get a 2 count. Then Kendrick would get in control of the match. There was a part where Kendrick would try an Irish whip on Williams, but he'd block it instead, send Kendrick into the corner. Kendrick would get his foot up, but Williams would catch it and swing it to the outside and kick him in the hamstring, which I'm not going to lie, it looked like a total low blow, but I did go back and replay it, and it was a shot to the hamstring and not a low blow. Later in the match, Williams would be in control, hitting a running knee in the corner, followed up by a snap suplex into a gut-wrench suplex. Then he did a T-bone suplex and go for a pin and getting a 2 count. Then Williams would look to hit the Chaos Theory, but Kendrick would then start biting him, and that's how he'd get out of it. Then Kendrick would look to hit him maybe with a superplex or a Frankenstein, I guess we'll never know. But Williams would fight him off. He'd then hit him with a Tornado DDT and pin him for the win. Really good match. I think both guys are very talented. Douglas Williams, very underrated. Brian Kendrick, well, he's the man with the plan. I'm just kidding. He didn't have that theme song at this time. has said he had very odd music, but he too very talented once again. So Douglas Williams would be our winner. 9 minutes 34 seconds, would retain the X Division title. 3.5 stars.